Konnichiwa, Pakusei-tachi. I'm Puppy-Sensei, the Puppy Girl Japanese teacher VTuber of Irium US. I make Japanese language content to help you level up your abilities. Today we're going to learn the phrase Aida ni. This is an interesting grammar point, so I hope you enjoy learning a little bit about it. Let's start with our grammar card. Aida ni is a really helpful grammar point that allows you to talk about doing something while something else is also going on. We should first talk about kind of really understanding the kanji that we see here. It's this Aida part, which can also sometimes be pronounced kan, and it means a gap or an interval, right? So we can kind of think about it as the span of time between two things. When we think about the function that the particle ni often plays in the Japanese language, we can kind of think about this being some sort of action situated in the span of an event, basically occurring during the span of time that is between when something happened and when something stopped happening, right? This will make more sense when we look at an example sentence, but basically we're going to see that Aida ni appearing after casual non-past verbs, after nouns, and after both na and e adjectives. The only thing here that I think is really tricky about the use of Aida ni is that you must remember the thing before the Aida ni is the event that you're doing something during. In other words, it's event or span of time plus Aida ni plus the action that you're doing during that event that came before the Aida ni. To me, this feels a bit backward compared to English, so I have to be a little careful when I form sentences with Aida ni. Let me show you an example. Alright, so this sentence is Kyou no jugyo no aida ni ongaku o kikimashita. That means I listened to music during today's class. While today's class was going on, I listened to music. Let's understand exactly what's happening in this sentence. Our actual event is Kyou no jugyo, today's class. We need to take note that this is a noun. Yes, it's a complex noun, but ultimately it is just a noun. It's the event during which you were listening to music. And because it's a noun, it's going to need to be marked with no before Aida ni. So if it's a noun, it's going to need to be no Aida ni, right? We see that here. The no is allowing you to attach your noun, the event in question, to Aida, which implies that it's the span of the event during which some other activity occurred. And then the rest of our sentence really is a sentence of its own. Ongaku o kikimashita. I listened to music. And that's really all that means. But in the context of this whole thought, it's I listened to music when? During class. Over the course of the class, I listened to music. The point that I'm trying to drive home here is that the action you were doing comes at the end of your sentence, and the event that you were doing that action during comes at the beginning, right? So it's the overall action into which your action fits, no Aida ni, and then the action that you were doing during the event. Yeah? Okay. However, as I said at the outset, we can use this same Aida ni pattern not only with nouns, which constitute the event itself, but also when we do things like the following, right? So this sentence is Nihongo o benkyou suru aida ni ongaku o kikimashita. Again, this sentence is Nihongo o benkyou suru aida ni ongaku o kikimashita. Ne? That means I listened to music while I studied Japanese. Note what we've lost here between these two example sentences. In this new sentence, our event during which we are listening to music is the action of studying Japanese, which is a verb. And because Nihongo o benkyou suru is a verb in the casual non-past, we're able to stick it right up against that Aida ni, and we therefore do not need the no particle that we did need when this was a noun, right? So if you're using a verb in the casual non-past, you can stick that right up against the Aida ni. Just your verb, and then at the end of the verb, just add Aida ni, right? And that makes your sentence flow really perfectly. Also, to be clear, that event does need to be in the non-past form, because the tense of our sentence is coming from the final verb, not from the primary event. Remember, we're describing a span of time during which the primary action was happening. And then, at the end of the sentence, we're saying we did or do some verb during that span of time, right? That's what we're getting from the Aida, that idea of a span, right? In other words, if we want to shift the tense of this sentence, we need to do it on the final verb, not the first verb. We'll do it in this way, right? So this new sentence is going to be 日本語を勉強する間に音楽を聴きます. Now, our sentence is not about doing something during an event which has already been completed. It's not about having done something or a completed action that we do during some event, but rather, this sentence now indicates something like a habitual action, right? I do something while something else happens, and I do this maybe frequently, right? I like to listen to music whenever I study, something like that. And of course, we can also swap that during part of the sentence with something like an adjective as well, right? And I think that might feel a little bit confusing, so let's look at two cases where I think this makes good sense. This sentence is 静かな間に音楽を聴きます. Alright, so we're staying in this 聴きます form. This is still going to be the present tense, right? And this sentence means something like, I listen to music while it's quiet, right? So that 静かな is taking 間に to describe a span of time during which it can be described as quiet. Basically, we're describing a quality of the time during which our activity takes place. But note that with a na adjective, we need that na between the adjective and the aida ni, right? That's to allow the na adjective to take aida ni in the first place. Kind of similar to what we had to do with nouns when we needed to use no. Yeah? In our final example, we're going to use an e adjective. But, and I think this is a really important use of the aida ni grammar point, what we're going to see in this example is the negation of an event using nai as an e adjective. Remember, when we conjugate a verb using nai, we actually take that verb and we turn it into an e adjective because nai itself is an e adjective. And that's what we're going to see in this example sentence. マネージャー様がいない間に音楽を聴きます. That means I listen to music when manager-sama isn't around. Yeah? Manager-sama ga inai means there isn't manager-sama. Manager-sama is not there. Maybe they're off doing some hyena thing. Who knows, right? But it's during that time, during the time that manager-sama isn't there, when I like to listen to music. Basically, we can always negate the verb that comes before aida ni to express that we do one thing while another circumstance or event is not occurring. That allows us to make sentences like this one, where I have the tendency to listen to music while manager-sama isn't there. So what do you think? Do you have questions about the aida ni construction, or do you find it very easy? Please feel free to ask in the comments, and give me a like and subscribe to my channel for more mini lessons like this one. Let's see what we're going to be studying in our brief grammar drop next week. Alright, Wheel of Grammar! Looks like next week we're going to be learning about mama. Ugh. That sounds weird. Anyway, look forward to it. I'll see you next week. Mata raishu!
Thanks for watching. I'm glad you watched until the end. You can find my other content here.
Also, it would make me really happy if you would check out jinxedgaming.com. If you're into zero-calorie gaming fuel and Oshi cups, you will love their products. Puppy-Sensei recommends the tangy strawberry flavor. It's so yummy. Remember to use code SENSEI at checkout for 10% off your order. Can't wait to see you next time. Matane!